All right, this is Marcus Hansen from FTF Canada. We're here with another episode of Inside Look with Coach Natalie from Ryerson. Natalie, thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So, yeah, Coach Natalie coaches the Ryerson women's soccer team, newly appointed over the last couple of years, and she's doing a great thing there in the city, in the heart of Toronto, in the OUA, big power conference, and we'll talk about that. How it's literally it's all for one and one for all in that conference, trying to make it to nationals every year. There's a lot of talented squads, and Ryerson's right in the thick of things and getting in the thick of things. So now, if you could just tell us about your playing background. Obviously, you were a fantastic player for those who don't know, and shouldn't pay me to say that. I've seen and I've heard her sisters as well, so I know there's it runs in the family. But yeah, just tell us a little bit of history about your playing background and how you got to Ryerson.
Yeah, so I actually played 5 years of varsity soccer at McMaster. I did my undergrad in social psych while I was there, and I just, absolutely loved every minute of it. I kind of found a new love for coaching probably in my second year. I started off coaching with the youth and, under 12 sort of players. And then in my fourth year after I graduated, my the coach at the time at Mac said like, hey, would you be interested in coming on board with us? And that really sort of shifted, my focus into, what I wanted to do long term with coaching. And after I moved back to Toronto, I heard that Ryerson, had an opportunity for me to come on board as a volunteer coach. And 5 years later now it's been, which is insane to think, right? But yeah, now I'm the head coach of the program. So it's definitely been an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Definitely. And, and you're obviously building something strong there, and you're a young coach, obviously still connected to some players that still play. But so being a footballer and obviously in the coaching ranks now, what are you looking for in characteristics for a player? Different positions. So maybe if we start when you're on the recruiting trail, when you're looking for the next Ryerson recruit, what are you looking for from, let's just say, a defender or an attacker or midfielder? What are different characteristics?
Yeah, I think every coach sort of has obviously their own opinions on what traits and characteristics that they're looking for best per position. Just like players probably have their opinions about what coaching philosophy they feel that they're going to best perform under, right?
Yep.
If I had to keep it short and sweet, because it's definitely a question that can go on for, a while in terms of answer. I would say if I'm looking for a goalkeeper, I would say confident and leaderful. Yep. I feel like the mood of the team sort of revolves around that position, and they've just, they have to inherit it, open arms, and that's just what it is. If I'm talking about like a center back or a defender, I kind of have this thing, if I'm talking about my two defenders in specific, my center backs, I like to have like an alpha and a complement. One that's, extremely dominant or vocal, physically aggressive, like a true, what we would call like natural center defender.
Yep.
And then a complement who is almost like too technical to be a center defender, if that makes sense. I just find that's like a balance.
Almost like a center converted or something like that.
Yeah, exactly, right? That holding mid player that can kind of drop in the back line or whatnot, right? But once we get into the midfield, I would say if we're talking more on like the holding mid side, definitely a high IQ. I kind of consider them to be like the balance or the rhythm keeper, so that the other two attacking center mids can have the freedom to be, creative or innovative or that sort of thing. Assuming you're playing a 4-3-3 or 3 in the middle, right? That's just sort of the formation that we play a little bit more often than others.
Yep.
Attackers, if we're talking like on the flank, you need to love to go 1v1. There's no doubt about that. You kind of really have to have a good attitude for that. And of course, finally, if you're a striker, you have to be goal hungry, right? If you don't want to score goals, you're in the wrong position.
Definitely. And great piece of advice. Obviously, everyone can take that. So at Ryerson, you guys mostly play 4-3-3. Is that the type of style you like to emulate? What type of philosophies do you guys like to implement there?
Like, honestly, it does change depending on the personnel that you have, right? Like, I would love to say, yeah, we're going to play a 3-5-2, but if I don't have 3 quality central defenders who can, deal with, a front 3 or sometimes a front 4, then I can't play 3 at the back, right? So it changes from year to year. I'd say that it's definitely a formation that we've played more often than others. I'm also a huge fan of a diamond midfield, so a 4-4-2 diamond midfield, but 4-3-3, I would say, something that we've been, consistently sort of introducing every year for the program since I've been here.
That's fantastic. And if we could just talk about, and I know this is kind of off topic, but it just came to me how The OUA, and especially U Sport, just their belief in in younger coaches, not youth coaches, but younger coaches. Obviously yourself, we have Ilya at UFT. Philip is a pretty young guy himself at Ryerson with you on the men's side. What has that belief in? I've spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of players love it because they feel like they get someone that knows the game a little bit more than, and no offense to anyone that's listening out there who's maybe in upper age, still a coach that's been there for 20 years. But what type of new philosophies are you guys bringing into the different programs across the country?
I think the biggest thing, and this is, having, conversations with my players and stuff, and why I think it's been a good fit for my program in particular, is that I've gone through it. I literally have played 5 years of varsity soccer. I know exactly what the academic course load is like. I know exactly how physically drained you're going to be, what resources are available to you, how you cope, how you manage. Do I have a social life? Do I not? So I think the off field and the emotional connection that I have with my players because of that is really great. I think on the women's side in particular, that's something that is necessary in order for them to perform on the field, right? They need to feel like they have some type of an emotional connection with their staff, to feel like they're supported and that they can be guided into whatever it is that they want to do, once they graduate. So I think that, maybe being a younger coach and a female, that's probably the most, relatable piece that, I could bring to the program.
Of course. Great answer there. And now we just want to talk a little bit about outside of football. So we talked about the characteristics inside the four lines. What type of person are you looking for at Ryerson? What type of individual do you like to bring into the team?
Oh, we like funny people. We like competitive people. We like just overall good people. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I kind of have a 4-pillar model at Ryerson. Obviously, my end goal is for when any student athlete leaves my program is that they're developed into their whole person, the best version of themselves as best possible. The reality is females in this game, and I'm going to use the word yet, we are not yet, making the millions of dollars to survive long-term in the sport that we love.
Yeah.
Right. So the development of, who they're going to be as people and when they leave Ryerson, that's extremely important to me. So we kind of focus on 4 areas. So obviously on-field performance, right? We wouldn't be having this conversation if soccer wasn't, a priority for them, if they were good at it, let's say. Community engagement. I think that, to play a varsity sport, it's an absolute huge privilege. And, I grew up, a single mom of 4 kids. And if we didn't have soccer, I don't know where we would be, 20, 30 years later and stuff. Team culture is massive. No bad apples in the bunch. Nobody's above the team mentality. And of course, your academics. At the end of the day, if, not to say that good grades guarantee success in life, but they definitely help.
Yeah. No, that's great pieces of advice. And again, every student athlete that hears that, that's just a well-rounded individual. If you can achieve all those pillars, then you're coming out of a program and you really got the best out of your program, right? I feel like,
and it ties in sync with our our department's mission statement, right? It very much is focused around the entire student athlete, and the development of the whole person, right? Because you can't have one without the other. It doesn't work like that in this day and age anymore.
100%. And okay, so we're gonna get into a little bit of academics right now. Obviously, every program's different. I've had a couple of friends that have been to Ryerson, and I know players that are there currently right now. Every program's different, so when you're looking from an academic standpoint, it's hard to judge. But generally speaking, on face value, when you're at a tournament or a showcase or a combine, and you're looking at a team sheet, what academics kind of okay, they're in the green zone, I could probably go after them, or what kind of puts you in that red zone where you'd be oh, I don't know if you're gonna be able to even qualify to get into a school?
I think so knowing that the province is a standard, right? You actually can't qualify for an AFA coming out of grade 12 unless you have an 80% minimum GPA.
Correct.
And that's something that I have no control over. So if you come at me with a 79.9, there's nothing that I can do, right? You need to have that 80%. It's so crucial. I would say that one being a huge reason. And second, if student athletes are, falling below that threshold in grade 12, it does sort of send a worry signal, right? Will this athlete actually do well, in this environment that is extremely rigorous, right? I mean, there's a lot of really, I would say, prestigious academic programs at Ryerson. We have, civil engineering, we have nursing. I think the nursing cutoff this year was 93%. It was insane.
Wow.
So I would definitely say that the 80% kind of threshold is sort of where I look at. That's not to say that, I've definitely had players come in that have had, the 75 plus, but I think the 80 is a good starting point, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And so individual requirements once you're at the program. I know schools have different, I know that there's obviously a OUA/U-Sport eligibility line. Is your team expectations higher than that? Is it that? What are you guys doing at Ryerson from a GPA and eligibility standpoint?
It's interesting, right? Like, so obviously with OUA, there's the 1.67. You have to have that in order to be eligible to play.
Yeah.
In order to receive your AFA from first year into second year, it's the 2.0 threshold, and then from second year plus, it's 2.67.
Yep.
We did have a team GPA that we were, focused on. I would say it was a team goal, right, or an individual goal, sort of, that led to a team goal later on. And actually, the last 2 years, we've removed that sort of, team standard where if you say, hey, like if you don't have a 2.5, like you won't be able to continue on. That's not what we're about.
Yeah.
After removing that, we actually had the highest team GPA in the entire department with a 3.3. So that was an interesting dynamic shift. Yeah. So I was extremely proud of that. I've got a lot of really academically driven players in my program, which I love. We had like 7 academic All-Canadians in 2018, 2019. So I think the GPA standard, obviously it differs per program. I can say that I don't have one.
Yeah.
I just know that our team goal is always to push for the 3.0 mark or higher.
Definitely. That's fantastic. And so talking about freshmen now, we'll go into this and just how they're always, it's always great to be a freshman. I call it. It's you're fresh off your high school career. You're probably feeling good about yourself. What are some important things that freshmen should kind of grasp coming into your program? Obviously, the U-Sport system and how the league is just shaped up now. It's so unique, as in once you're done high school in May or June, whatever you call it, in 2 months you might be playing your first U-Sport game. So what is that adjustment period like, and how do you guys kind of, I guess, quote unquote, using a work terminology here, but onboard your freshmen to make sure they're ready for day one?
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice to have them around as much as you possibly can, right? Once they do decide to commit to your school and, it's official.
Yeah.
I can say during the time of COVID, it's been nice to sort of, at least catch up with them via Zoom call and have them join in on a team trivia or Jeopardy, game night with us. And I just think that the more that they are, around the team, obviously the transition is going to be easier when it comes time for, preseason or when camp starts in August, right? There are some programs where, we're lucky in the OUA where we can actually, take advantage of playing with our recruits, within a summer program, right? And there's a number of programs that do that and a number of a number of clubs that do that, right? So that's also a huge perk of, staying in the CIS and the OUA, whereas I know in the NCAA there's some different, guidelines and rules there.
No, definitely. And how busy is it, that schedule? A student, obviously you played 5 years at McMaster, like you said.
Yep.
How is that schedule? And if you could just touch on, I don't think we touch on it a lot, and we say you're going to be busy, but I don't think people really understand. What's it kind of like the day in the life of a student athlete at your program?
Yeah, so we have a day in the life of the Ram, right? That's sort of, what we try to introduce our recruits to. The reality is it's not easy no matter where you go. Be prepared for a huge shift, right? Grade 12, as much as you think that you're prepared for it, it's heightened. It's emphasized like times 100, right?
Yeah.
Having said that, what I think is really unique is, all of the resources that you have available to you, right? So if I had to put like an hour mark on it specific to our program, maybe 20 to 25 hours a week while you're in season, which is, August until November, assuming you make nationals. And then in the off season, let's say January to April, you're probably looking at about 14. And that's including like, travel, team meetings, team S&C sessions, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
That's a lot.
It is a lot for sure.
It's full circle. It's definitely full circle. And the next thing I want to just talk to you about is, let's say someone wanted to come to Ryerson, maybe their marks didn't work out or they were at another place. How do you view transfers? We're going to have a lot of transfers that are listening. Obviously, the athletic department at Ryerson is very prestigious. How do you view transfers and someone that might want to come, but maybe they didn't athletically qualified, or maybe they just weren't good enough to start. They had to develop a little bit more. Maybe it was a situation where it didn't work out somewhere and they want to come to your program. How do they reach out to you? How do they get in contact with you? And how do you view transfers at coming in and helping you for not necessarily the full 5 years, but maybe three years, possibly even 2?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, whether an athlete comes to you for 1 year or they stay the entire 5, if they bring value to your program, then in my opinion, they're worth it, right? We haven't had too many transfers in the past. I can say this year we have 2 former NCAA players that are actually going to be, they've officially signed and joined our roster for 2020, 2021,
Nice.
which is really exciting. But in terms of having transfers, from let's say like JUCOs or, smaller, I would say like, maybe D2 or D3 programs, it doesn't happen as often.
Yeah.
For me, at least in the last, 3-4 years that I've been here. But I think that it's always a good opportunity to stay connected with players because everyone changes paths in life, and you might, go down to the States, or you might go across, you might go to out West and play a year or 2 years and just, realize that your heart was set on playing in the city the entire time, and then, make your way back to Ryerson. So I think it's very much an open door policy with us, in a sense that you'll always have an opportunity to showcase.
Of course. Great. Fantastic answer. It's so true. It's so true. For all the transfers listening out there, you never know where your path's going to take you. And there's some great institutions here. That's why we're doing this, to spread some light on just your opportunities are endless. Your opportunities are endless. Never to say. And then next, we're going to just transition into your highlight recruitment videos. So I know I watch a ton of them. I know, and that's just us being a media company. And I'm not even a coach. So I know you must watch a ton of them. But coming from a youth sport coach, what can you see? What are some, we call it like the do's and don'ts that you can give as advice for athletes that are sending a highlight tape to Ryerson women's soccer and they want to catch Natalie's attention?
I think while highlight tapes are so great, and I think, they're a highlight tape for a reason, right? People are there, you're cutting your clips of your best moments, the goals you scored, the goals you prevented, all that kind of stuff. My advice would be, if you are sending a highlight recruitment video, maybe send along like a 45-minute or 30-minute clip of actual game footage.
Yeah.
I think that, not to say that highlight tapes can be fabricated, right? But there's a reason why you're only showing the good stuff.
Of course.
And so I think it's, even for me, right, it's just something that I think that I would benefit as a coach from watching. And there's a lot of really great things that you can see from 45 minutes of game film that necessarily you wouldn't be able to see from an actual highlight tape. For example, I'm a huge, person when it comes to attitude, right? I can see nonverbal and, kind of, I guess, verbal if there's sound, comments or reactions, really, unfortunate moments in the game, and how do players bounce back from that? What does their resilience look like? How are they leaders with their programs, right? So I think that aspect, when we're talking about highlight tapes, just send along a little bit of game footage as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And normal recruitment strategies. So obviously, I know you were able to come to that OPSM FTF event we had in Ottawa. Obviously, the Umbro's a big event that I know you guys, your staff would have probably been at. But during COVID, how are your recruitment strategies changed? Where are you guys at in terms of what you guys are looking to do for, obviously, trying to find maybe another piece or two for 2020 and then 2021?
Yeah, I mean, COVID sucks. I'll be honest. Like, recruiting's been really hard. I think the one thing that I'm actually glad that we, sort of worked our recruiting schedule on is that we've made a lot of early connections and relationships with players that are, probably now, let's say 03s, 04s, very brief introductions.
Yep.
So in terms of, we always want to plan a year in advance. Yep. Our 2002s rather, right? They're solidified for, this coming fall. And the 03s that we've, previously made relationships with, those are the conversations that we're, continuing to kind of nurture. I actually really empathize for, the players that are, let's say struggling to find a program or not being able to be provided the recruiting opportunity that they feel they deserve because of COVID. And my words of encouragement would be just email and call and email as many times as it takes, because persistence is key. Just get your message across, and until no is no, don't take no for an answer.
For sure. I love that. I love that one. And what showcase events? So if someone wanted to be seen by Ryerson and your guys' program, your staff's program, where are you guys attending? I know you guys obviously have some League One influence, so you guys are watching some League One games obviously on your staff, but what are some events you guys kind of pencil in throughout the year that you'll
I mean, the top four for us right off the top of my head: FTF, OPSM, Umbro, and Durham Showcase that happens in March and December.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that we don't miss. There's definitely smaller ones that happen, where maybe it's like we've been invited to watch a friendly between two club games or whatnot. I'm also a huge fan of just like, obviously a total soccer nerd, and I just really like watching games. So sometimes I'll just take a look online at the OPDL schedule, and I'll just, pop in and say, hey, I haven't seen, U17 Unionville play in a really long time. I've just made that up off the top of my head. Like maybe I'll go watch their game against Woodbridge or something. So I really do find there's a lot of value because it's that unexpected, like they don't know you're there in a sense, right? So
no, for sure.
You get like a true sense of what the player's ability are, or maybe not, right? Maybe they have an off day and you need to see them again. So.
No, that's fantastic. And I know we already touched on it, but just for recruits in terms of your recruiting class, how does the cycle tend to work? Because I know speaking with a lot of players, and we speak to a lot of players on a daily basis, this is just something that they don't really understand. And you kind of touched it on it already, that you're speaking to O3s and even a couple of touch points on O4s right now. But how does your cycle kind of work? So let's just say last year, let's just go back to last year. So season ended October, November for you guys. Where are you guys? Are you guys finishing up the 2002s, or do you kind of have your sense on, have a couple of players committed? How does that whole cycle work, and when does it go on to the next one, basically?
Yeah, so for us at Ryerson, I kind of like to have the incoming recruits solidified a year prior. So for example, if we were to talk about the O2s, I would say, majority of them solidified by November, just before Christmas, to give them kind of like, an 8-9 month prep phase, to into, the start of their university career. It's not to say that we don't get recruits that are very last minute. I mean, last year is a perfect example. We had a recruit that was, basically a 5-day, pre-camp kind of thing. Those situations definitely do happen. But if you're, if we're talking like diligently and, actually preparing properly, we're probably about a year out. So right now the conversation would be for O3s in hopes to sign them before, December of this year to be ready for next year.
Makes sense. Yes. Thank you for shedding that light. And we obviously, you guys have your own identification camps. We talked about our identification camps. Just want to shed some light on players that do take that route, that are going to a Ryerson ID camp, that are going to an FTF ID camp or an OPSM personal identification camp when you're not with your club. What are certain things that you look for at those events when they're not with their team and they're not in their, let's just say, their comfort zone? How are you analyzing a player or judging a player when they're kind of out of their element, let's just say?
I think it goes back to that resilience piece, right? It's an uncomfortable situation, and how you deal with the external factors, I think, says a lot about who you are and, how you're going to be, when you're in a program, right? I would say that with regards to like our recruiting ID camps, I kind of tend to stay away from just, mass invites, like send it out to whoever. I do I've been a player myself, and I've definitely been in situations where those camps have been fantastic, but also where I've been in situations where I'm like, is the coach even watching me, right? And that's obviously specific to the school, right? But I think for us, when it comes to us at Ryerson, it's more, we're inviting out those players that we have a genuine interest in, so that's an easier way for us to sort of narrow down our recruiting class for the following year.
For sure. And Natalie, thank you so much. And last question, just for any young Canadians. Obviously, you were one that has been through the whole process from start to finish, and now in the coaching ranks and coaching at a top university. Any advice for any young Canadians that are looking to follow your path and get into the USPORTS system? And who knows, even eventually, maybe we'll have some of them coach against you one day. But yeah, any piece of advice?
You said it right there. I think, seeing a player that I've maybe coached or, coached maybe an opposing team against, I think that would be a great experience, right? I would love to see a player coach against me one day. I don't think there's enough female coaches. I mean, it shows for itself. There's 3 of us in the OUA. Up until last year, I was the only one, and there's 6 of us across Canada. So play for as long as you can and get into coaching, because we definitely need more women in the game, that's for sure.
That's fantastic. Well, Natalie, thank you so much. I hope you and the family stay safe during this time. We will definitely catch up. See you on. We'll be talking and texting and getting some more players to Ryerson, of course. But yeah, just thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.